The Indian IT sector employs over 4 million people in direct employment and around 10.3 million in indirect employment. In the backdrop of reports which suggest that over 56,000 employees across 7 major IT firms could be retrenched, there are also concerns that major markets such as the United States, United Kingdom, Europe and Australia could further restrict visa applications for Indian engineers. When the India Risk Report team spoke with Joseph Pompa, the Minister Counselor for Consular Affairs at the US Embassy in India, he said,
"The President did request a review of all of our employment visa programs to be done by the State Department, the Department of Labor, and the Department of Homeland Security. That review is ongoing. Right now, the programs all remain unchanged and tremendously popular here in India."
Nonetheless, the concerns for the Indian tech industry remain persistent, with issues over the quality of skills being imparted in our educational institutions to the adaptability of the current lot of employees against the trend of automation. With an estimated 7.7% contribution of the IT sector to the GDP in 2016, the impact of any disruption would be significant. This episode of India Risk Report brings forward a better understanding of the challenges the sector is facing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of India Risk Report. And in this, we look at the impact of policies abroad that could have a negative effect on India's IT sector. For instance, the US President, Mr. Donald Trump, had based his electoral strategy on trying to ensure that safeguarding of jobs in the United States would also include restrictions on visas, particularly in skilled labor, such as those who come in from the Indian IT sector. And it is for this reason that Wipro became the first Indian company to declare US policies as a threat to the Indian IT sector. Subsequently, Infosys also joined with this viewpoint, but more importantly, Infosys then decided to hire some 10,000 US personnel to expand its own business. But most importantly, it is the US House of Representatives that has come up with the idea of introducing new legislations to restrict H-1B visas, and the LY Visa Reform Act of 2017 would apply there also. So quite clearly, this will have a spiraling effect on the Indian IT sector. And we have two experts with us who are going to look at the various aspects that we need to guard against to ensure that this sector, which is now providing something in excess of 7% of the growth within the Indian economy, should not suffer the negative impacts of policies that individual countries adopt. More importantly, because these policies are going to have impact on the skills that India provides to an area which is extremely crucial for the safety, security, and the business functionality of the rest of the world. We have Mr. Gary Singh with us, who is the head honcho of IRIS and a man who spent a lot of time in the security sector doing risk assessment, risk analysis, is a consultant to various top companies in India and abroad on how to mitigate the risks that business faces and the challenges that business faces. So Gary, thanks once again for being on the show. And we have with us Mr. Rodney Ryder, a partner in Scriptboard, a legal luminary, I'm told. So you are going to enlighten us about the legal dimensions and how we can encourage our skill-oriented sector to be legally prepared for whatever the US throws on us. And not just the US, from what I understand, even European countries and even Australia are beginning to close their gates to the Indians. So Rodney, let me ask you the first question, and that is, what are the key challenges in addressing some of the risks that have been outlined for the IT and ITES sector, particularly in the light of the fact that the IT sector is not that large in numbers compared to the Indian population. I mean, I think employs people in excess of 1 million. But the sheer impact it has on the size of growth in the Indian economy is something that makes it very, very important.
The sector itself is vital, you are right. not just in terms of size and contribution to the GDP, but in terms of being brand ambassadors outside the country. I feel companies should be prepared because almost every country, especially in the Western world, is starting to look inward, starting to build protections, and there are ways to be prepared for that.
Okay. Gary, you were making a point earlier to me before the start of this discussion that, there is clearly a need for greater governmental involvement in this whole thing. And the government can't distance itself from something like the IT sector purely saying, oh, it's a corporate initiative and a corporate enterprise, so they'll find their way around it. Well, the government has to help these companies, as is the case in the United States in particular and elsewhere, that the government there gets very involved with any emerging sector. And the big sectors also, at the end of the day, something like the defense sector, the US government has a say on what technology and what level of technology can go out of the US. So what is the government doing here? Where has the government failed in maintaining some kind of cohesiveness in its approach to how the sector should be addressed? And isn't government and the country reaping the benefits of the massive boom that the IT sector has continued to provide?
Sure, absolutely right. So if you look at traditionally the IT sector, which also includes a lot of components such as KPOs, BPOs, IT, data processing, and a lot of factors, traditionally it has just got two factors which have dictated global market: technical skills and costs involved. So costs are just like gravity. Wherever the cost was less, this industry has been flowing. And this industry flew towards India, not by choice of Indians, by the way. It was definitely decided by people who were holding this work within them, whether it was in USA, UK, or other parts of the global markets. And when it came to India, definitely we Indians were one of the best in technical manpower supply, and at the same time great cost we provided to the global companies. And thirdly, government did help by doing a lot of taxation waivers and other factors. So this industry started staying and evolving here. Very crucial about the global IT industry that India not only grew simultaneously with the globe in this technology, rather helped the globe to grow. And when this situation happened, yes, the cost started increasing, the technical expertise some other countries started playing for it. So what's happening right now, there are two major factors which will take it ahead apart from technical and cost. One is policies as made by countries, and number two, the competition that we are going to receive from other countries. So when it comes to policy, a lot of countries have started creating data protection acts. They say this is my job, this should not go out. So they feel like this is export of job, but the same presidents and the prime ministers, when they sit on global trade forums where there's an opportunity to sell their goods out, they talk about globalization. They talk about equal opportunity. They say there should not be any duties and taxes levied by countries like India so that their goods can easily fly in.
I think you've raised a very important point, and that leads me to my next question, Rodney, that India is the world's largest sourcing destination for information technology related stuff, and accounting for approximately 67% of an industry which runs into about 124 to 130 billion dollars. So the point that Gary was raising, that there is this protectionist element in the policies of overseas powers, but if they are protective enough, and India sources 2/3 of the world's stuff that comes out of them, then what are they protecting against? Are they building to just shoot it off into the sky, or are they building to sell somebody?
Excellent point. We must remember that a lot of this might just be bluff and bluster as well, because when we look at leaders, if I may venture, politicians catering to their own domestic constituencies, we have a lot of talk about protecting jobs, enhancing jobs, some of which is definitely genuine, but it cannot be against the overall interest of any company or country. Having said that, it's time for our governments to look at what would benefit India in the long term. There have been Indian companies which have successfully adapted and fought on foreign principles as well. So it's time for us to look at influencing in a positive way, discussing our own goals and putting the interests of our country ahead at trade negotiations as well.
Well, interesting, Gary. Short, quick question. When we talk of jobs, the Indian IT industry is expected to add 130,000 to 150,000 new jobs this year itself. At its peak, it was adding 2.4 lakh jobs a year. Now, jobs is a big challenge for the Modi government. So why isn't the government stepping forward and letting this expand more? And you obviously have always believed that give them jobs and keep them away from trouble.
Well, yes, the jobs are a great balancing factor. The IT jobs are an even bigger factor because all these great technical graduates which come out, we are able to keep them employed and not getting disoriented. So this industry is very much required for country as well as economy, both sides. So as of now, the analysis which is done in USA by some of the US research firms talks about India may lose around 6.5 million jobs over the next 5 years. So is this beginning of something that we never want to happen? That's where the government as well as the industry bodies need to step in together, look at the factors which are not going in our favor and ensure that we don't let this research firm be successfully predicting the future.
Well, interesting. I need to go in for a break, but I think we need to come back after the break to look at 2 or 3 key issues. That does India really have a roadmap for the future, and how the government of India can allow this important industry to benefit and grow, and how the government can also keep away nefarious tendencies which all large industries eventually develop, and that is unions, and the impact of unions on the whole job culture in the IT industry. But that after a break. Welcome back. We continue to have our 2 experts with us, and we are looking at the challenges that the Indian IT sector faces in the light of growing restrictions to Indian IT professionals and their visas, particularly by countries like the US. And I'd like to ask you this, I mean, since Rodney, you're a lawyer, and there have been concerns over immigration visa restrictions that are now being played down by US officials. So we really don't know who to take seriously, because there is an announcement that comes from Washington, and suddenly the official line with the envoys and embassy here that no, the situation is not that hopeless, because around 70% of the visas issued under the H-1B category over the past 9 months have gone to Indians, and that a record 1.2 million visa of Indians were adjudicated by the US last year. So where is this nightmare scenario coming from?
Well, as I said earlier, this could well be a part of tying up a political campaign, but at the same time, it's advisable to be cautious. As businesses, our clients have to be sure that they are able to target the right services, and where there is a need, I'm confident that the visas and the jobs would flow.
Okay, Gary, just taking the visa thing a little forward, cash-rich Indian companies are also studying the possibility of buying US companies and thus increasing the number of locals on their rolls. This would counter the provision of the H-1B visa under the L-1 Visa Reform Act. Is this happening?
Well, as of now, I think the Indian companies are looking at a lot of mitigations. Some of the companies have looked at maybe procuring or merger acquisition with US companies. Some of the companies have started hiring big time on onshore, as they call it, which is whether in US, UK or anywhere else. So different companies are looking at different solutions. But something I would like to say here, taking IT away from India is not going to be very easy. If you look at globally, the kind of technical expertise we have established, look at the largest 2 IT companies in the world. It's Google and Microsoft, thanks to Mr. Sundar Pichai and Mr. Satya Nadella, and in special thanks to Mr. Sundar Pichai for all the innovation, machine learning and futuristic things that he's bringing in. And there are many such IT professionals in the row to take on global positions. So India stands very strong, But that should not end up being a message of complacency for us, that whatever we need to do to get the internal dynamics right to support this industry further, we must do that.
Okay, and Rodney, there is this view that particularly now with the mess that was created in Infosys, that Indian IT companies still need to sort of go by some very effective corporate management norms, which would enhance the confidence of those who wish to come in and do more business in India, because quite clearly, what happened in Infosys had a dramatic impact on the prices, share prices, on the stock markets and everything. So there are elements linked to it. So how does the government of India, if at all, ensure greater stability on this kind of stuff? Because there is a lot of money involved, which suddenly doesn't look like money anymore.
Right. Vis-a-vis companies and their internal handling of differences or crises, I feel that the Infosys problem could have happened almost anywhere, not just with an Indian company, anywhere in the world across any global company. Issues between founders, co-founders, and professionals who step in and run the company at a later date are not uncommon. Having said that, I think successive governments in India have understood that not just the IT sector, but there are many key sectors which need to be promoted, skills that need to be developed. We are on the right track. It's just that things need to be accelerated and handled minutely from day to day.
Okay, Gary, here is something that I spoke about in the introduction, the need for a strategic blueprint. That to me would involve a few things. Firstly, do you look at tapping talent in India outside of South India, where bulk of India's IT talent comes from? Are there plans in place with the government of India to tap this talent and get in vast pools of skilled Indians to become part of a large IT army as such? The second thing is, how do you consider enhancing the skills of the current curriculum that is being provided to students to make them more job-centric? Because one of the problems about the Indian education sector is that to get them to turn the corner is like getting the aircraft carrier to move in a hurry in the sea. It just takes kilometers and kilometers. So how do you create that whole, I would say, the whole vertical in a new way that will allow India to really move at the speed with which fast-moving computer chips move?
I think very, very pertinent points, and especially you're so right about why this industry didn't spread across all regions of the country, especially when this industry doesn't need any ports. You need not close to be a port to export. You need pipes, and every work you do is exported on pipes. This should have reached northeast. This should have reached a lot of mainland north side and everywhere else. But yes, maybe somewhere or the other, the respective governments in the state level and also somewhere at the federal level, we recognize it late that what it can do to us. But right now, what it needs to be studied is, if you look at competition to India internationally, well, Manila or the Philippines are emerging as a great financial outsourcing destination. China is emerging as a low programming kind of a destination. Similarly, there are a lot of international destinations which are coming up. So we should ensure whatever they are trying to do, we do it within separate hubs that can be created across the industry. And also the second point, which is again very relevant, and it talks about how the skill sets can be done. I think we as Indians are facing a very generic challenge, and not only this industry, it's about coming together. I think the IT industry, thankfully, knows what it needs now, next year and 2 years from now, and they could have easily walked up to some engineering colleges, and we have now chains of engineering colleges when they would have said, I hire 10,000 people every year. I will definitely hire 2,000 from you. Can you build this into your curriculum? I'm very sure every engineering college would have happily done it. So it's a challenge of coming together. I don't know why we all love to plan independent of each other, and when all the plans fail, then we point fingers at each other. I think there's a need to come together. The government, the educational institutions, the industry, that's where the blueprint can be made. Blueprint cannot be made only on the government table or only on the industry table. I think these three bodies need to come together and start discussing.
It's a very valid point. I've always believed that for every initiative in India to succeed, you need a champion. And the champions are missing because here you have people who are extremely good in their own space, leading IT companies. And you have the government which has all the power, and you have people who are reasonably informed out there. But they are not talking to each other. I mean, that's the story with Government of India in every department. Everyone's in watertight compartments. They're expecting, wo mere se milne aayega, I won't go and meet him. And that's where the India story is taking a hit. But Rodney, a question to you again, and this has legal implications. And this is, there's growing disenchantment amongst domestic IT workers, which has led to infancy level unionism. For instance, there is the Forum of IT Employees, which has begun to mobilize people by trying to ensure that once, like any sarkari job, that you are in it, then you're protected for life. But the problem that is emerging is that more than 10,000 employees have been laid off from major companies. The layoffs have been happening in small companies too. In 2007, Japanese company Nomura announced in a research note that jobs cut could amount to 2 to 3% of their overall headcount. And I think this is a precedent that is going to be established with various other companies too. Your views?
First, that companies must realize that the employees have a right to form unions, to air their grievances, to seek solutions. At the same time, they have to also put in place clear, transparent norms for evaluation, promotion, so on and so forth. And once these two balancing forces are addressed, we can have a fairer, more transparent workplace.
Okay. So Gary, last question, short answer before we wrap up. IT sector has seen a number of upheavals. For instance, Snapdeal had decided to slash about 80% of its workforce. Startup industry, benchmark related issues for having upskilled labor force and working towards automation would again see a lot of slashing of heads. Is that going to be the trend, and what's the way out?
Well, I will say as of now, this will surely not be a trend. We had, without taking any names, we had a lot of, let me take the sort of liberty of calling them irresponsible managers who focused on valuations for personal growth of wealth rather than looked at creating a corporate that was going to help the globe and country. So there have been those situations. Well, unfortunately, these norms or these issues are not being checked under any regulation as of now. But all this private investment and what kind of valuation it is going to reach has to be checked. I think that's where the government may like to bring in a little bit of more things. And maybe just one more point to add on to Rodney. The unionization is great till the time it's kept out of politicization.
Right. Well, yes, all your points well taken. We are terribly short of time. But thank you for your wisdom. And I think those in the IT sector would also more or less agree with most of your inputs. I'm quite going away from the show much, much better educated. And we hope you'll be back with us for our next episode. Until then, goodbye.